Let's get it, 580 Sports Talk, coming to you live and direct on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. We've got you for the next 3 hours here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our live streaming video. Available one of two ways on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, or on Facebook at WIBW News. However you're tuning in this afternoon, thank you for being with us and spending some part of your Wednesday afternoon with 580 Sports Talk. I am Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis will be along in a bit. Brendan Dworzinski remains on paternity leave. 3 hours of sports talk today. So much to get to on this program, including a real kick in the downstairs for the Kansas State Wildcats in the Wildcat Classic last night. If you watched the game, it ended up being a hell of a game. Really did. Overtime thriller at the T-Mobile Center with Drake's Bennett Sturts hitting the game-winning three-pointer with about 3 seconds to play in the extra session, handing the Jerome Tang era Wildcats their first ever overtime loss, 73-70, after the Cats had rallied from a 20-point first-half deficit, which, on the one hand, you're inclined to give some credit for. On the other hand, how the hell did you fall behind 20 in the first half in the first place is also a very valid question to ask. But after the game, the conversation turned towards what the Wildcats were saying and not how they performed. Coleman Hawkins with some post-game comments, and then Jerome Tang coming to the defense of his player as well. And much like there is sometimes a right message that is delivered by the wrong messenger, there is also sometimes the right message at the wrong time. And what Jerome Tang gave us last night, I believe, was the right message at the wrong time. It's 100% in line and of a piece with the thing that he believes in as a leader more than any other principle. But when you lose a game in overtime to a mid-major and you go to 6-4 and the NCAA tournament feels further and further away from what is easily the most expensive roster ever constructed for Kansas State men's basketball, that is not when people want to hear that particular message. So I will play Jerome Tang's remarks from last night, the question and his answer in full, so that we get the full context, because I think that's important. Because I think a lot of times on social media, and frankly, this is where so much of this conversation stems from, is what goes on social media. I think on social media, sometimes we get like the 20-second soundbite of the podium. That's what you get from the TV guys or the beat writers sometimes, instead of the full question and the full answer. We'll give you the full question, the full answer, and you can judge for yourself. But for me, uncomfortably close to being the kind of thing that I have credited recently Jerome Tang for not doing in his post-game remarks. We'll talk about the game itself, too, which, again, really good basketball game. Look, Drake is good, and K-State just about got run out of downtown Kansas City last night. They made an important adjustment and, frankly, just ratcheted up their defensive intensity, and that was all it took to turn the game on its head. For 35 of the 45 minutes, Kansas State was not just a little bit better than Drake. They were a lot better. But those first 10 minutes were really bad. And it's sort of this K-State season so far writ large that you can see the vision, you can see what the talent on this roster could allow it to become, but it's really hard to shake the first impression. And the first impression that a lot of people have of this team is not a good one. So we'll talk about that. We'll really get into what we saw last night in the Wildcat Classic, break down some K-State hoops. And, of course, we'll get Tim Fitzgerald's thoughts on it all. Tim Fitzgerald, publisher at GoPowerCat.com, will join us at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. I'm sure he will have plenty to say, not only about what transpired on the court, but what transpired at the podium after the game last night. So that's coming up. Plenty of K-State stuff to talk about today. Also, plenty of Chiefs to get to today. We are on day 3 of Mahomes' ankle watch. Once again, QB1, a full practice participant at One Arrowhead Drive today. So too, one of his receivers that he's only shared the field with for one preseason snap. And now it's starting to feel like maybe Hollywood Brown's going to get on the field on Saturday against the Houston Texans. And we could talk about that, and we will talk about that. But the other thing I want to talk about, something I heard on a podcast that I listen to every week, General Sports podcast that I listen to, and it was a question that I thought I was going to have like a really obvious answer back to, and then I realized that I didn't. And the question is, what do the Chiefs do well on offense? Roll that question around in your brain for a second. What would you say right now that the Chiefs do well on offense? What would you say the identity of the Chiefs offense is? I have an answer for that, and it sounds like a joke, but honestly, it's not a joke. And honestly, it's also not like a terrible identity either. There are definitely worse ones. But we'll talk about that because I think it's really interesting how for lack of a better way to put it, the nerd numbers suggest that the Chiefs offense is fine. It's a top 10 offense in the league. There's nothing wrong with being a top 10 offense in the league. In fact, that's pretty good. That's top third of the league. You'll take that. That's what the nerd numbers will tell you. The raw numbers tell you that this is maybe closer to a bottom 10 offense. So why the differential and how that leads to what the identity of this Chiefs offense is. And it's been part of their identity since Patrick Mahomes took over as the starting quarterback, but now more than ever, it might be the identity of the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs on offense. We're going to get to that a little bit later on in today's show. Plus, some other stuff we'll talk about. I wanted to get around to talking about the Chiefs offensive line. Spencer, when he joins us, was watching something that had an interesting observation about Joe Thuney at left tackle and the limitations that even a player as good as Thuney has at that spot that was making it difficult for the Chiefs offensive line and by proxy for their passing game on Sunday. So Spencer will talk to us about that. And also, are the Chiefs now maybe going to be more inclined to bring Trey Smith back in free agency? Because the assumption has been for a long time that they can't afford to do that. Can they afford not to at this point? That, I think, is the more interesting question. So we'll get into that. Also, bowl season is underway. And I do want to take a little time toward the end of the show today to bask in the glory of the very real Art of Sports LA Bowl hosted by Gronk. Are any of those words in the Bible? No. Is that a real bowl game that exists? Yep. And that is the magic of bowl season. And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Plus, we got 5A Sports Talk headlines, 2 news stories on what is wrong with you, including one from the world of sports. We'll play around to One Gotta Go. All that and more on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. And, of course, your interaction with the program today. Jump on into the YouTube live chat. If you're watching the live stream on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, whether you're watching on your web browser at youtube.com, you're watching on the YouTube app, on your mobile device, your tablet, maybe you're watching on a streaming stick like a Roku or Amazon Fire Stick, there is a live chat and you can join it and interact not just with me and Spencer, your host today, but you can also interact with your fellow listeners. And that's always a fun thing to do as well. See Christopher in the live chat today, along with Mark B, Mark H, Trevor, and Vance are in as well. And I'm sure we'll get some more along as we go today. As Christopher points out, we got the camel emoji in the chat. You can do emojis in the live chat. How about that? It is, in fact, Hump Day. And we thank you for being with us here on 580 Sports Talk. All right. K-State loses to Drake last night, 73-70 in overtime. The best player on the court was playing in the MIAA last year. Bennett Sturtz, the sophomore point guard for Drake, was the best player on the court. And even though Kansas State turned the game on its ear by deciding we only really need to guard Sturtz and Mitch Mascari, who for the first 15 minutes of the game quite literally could not miss a shot. It didn't matter what K-State did defensively. He was making everything. I think he could have headed the ball in if he wanted to. He was on a heater. And Kansas State decided, well, those are the only two guys we're going to guard. If anybody else beats us, that's fine, but we're not going to let those two guys beat us. And that helped get Kansas State back into the game. It feels like an obvious adjustment, but it was a quick adjustment. It was made decisively, and the Kansas State players carried it out for the balance of the rest of the game. Credit to the coaches, credit to the players for being able to turn what was a 29-9 deficit into a 3-point lead with the ball late in regulation. But Bennett Sturtz took over the game. Sturtz at that point had a steal and a score. Sturtz, of course, took over the overtime. Sturtz, of course, hit the game-winning shot over Brendan Housen after Coleman Hawkins had tied the game in the OT with a 3 with 12 seconds to go. We'll talk more about the game in a second. But I want to talk about after the game. And Coleman Hawkins was on the podium first. Him and another K-State player, I think it was David Gasson. And Hawkins is a guy that has taken a lot of criticism and abuse online for his performance so far this season. He is the guy under the biggest microscope for Kansas State this year because he's the guy in the big NIL deal, right? He's the guy in one of the largest NIL deals maybe in the history of college basketball, right? And he has come in. And there have been moments, like I thought last night, on balance, Coleman Hawkins was really good. And he hit the big shot at the end of the game to tie it. That was a moment crying out for somebody to take the bull by the horns and be the guy to take that shot. Coleman Hawkins was the guy to take that shot, and he made it. I don't think that you can point a finger last night at Coleman Hawkins and say that guy's the reason K-State lost. But his team is 6-4. His team is underachieving. And it is his team when he's the highest paid guy, when he's the marquee guy on the roster. Coleman Hawkins is under the biggest microscope. And he spoke at the podium about having people in his social media comments on Twitter or on Instagram, and they're telling him that I hope you break your leg and things like that. And it is, of course, awful that any person, never mind just a college athlete, any human being faces online abuse for any reason. It's a symptom of our society. It is behavior that is encouraged, literally monetized on Twitter these days. If you pay Elon Musk $8 a month, you and your little blue check get promoted to the very top of the replies, and you get into the For You tab more often. So more people see what you have to say because you pay your $8. And so when you're a jerk and a troll and a loser behind a fake name and an avatar that's not a picture of you, and you've got no life and nothing going for you, you're a miserable human being who's a troll, and all you got is your $8 to Elon every month and your blue check, you're more visible in that way. And that behavior being encouraged is awful, and nobody deserves that kind of treatment. Hey, hell, Twitter's so bad. I don't know if y'all noticed. I don't really mess with Twitter anymore. Like, I'm not really on there like that anymore. Find me on Blue Sky. Dan Lucero on Blue Sky. So to say that no athlete, no person deserves online abuse, nobody deserves to have somebody tell them that, hey, I hope you break your leg, I hope you die, this, that, and the third. That does not say that you are immune from criticism. There is a fine line between criticism and abuse. And really, if you're a decent person, it's not that hard to walk. I can sit behind this microphone and say, Coleman Hawkins needs to play better. Coleman Hawkins needs to show more leadership. Coleman Hawkins needs to be the alpha dog that this team desperately needs, particularly late in games. That is criticism. No one is immune from that. And it doesn't matter how much NIL money you make, whether you got a $3 million NIL deal or you've got a $50 NIL deal from the burger place down the street, or whether you're a walk-on. You're not immune from criticism. But the abuse is another thing, and that is truly unfortunate. But Coleman Hawkins talked about that, and then someone asked Jerome Tang in the postgame about Hawkins's remarks in particular. And so here's the question, and here's Jerome Tang's full answer. Again, I think it's important to give the full context here. So this is This is uncut. This is not edited. I didn't take anything out. This is the question. This is the answer from Jerome Tang. Eventually.
Coach Coleman was just in here just talking about how he said it's kind of hard to look at his phone and see things and what people wish upon him, but obviously had a really good game today. Just maybe not his performance specifically, but maybe his performance or just how the guys were resilient just to, fight back all game and, maybe what Coleman did this game that just really maybe stood out to you.
Man, Coleman's effort and his leadership, the energy, the enthusiasm he played with was great. His buy-in on what we wanted to do, I was so proud of that, and it's a shame, that some of the comments that these guys get, right? Like the narrative going into this game was that the Drake team, which is a wonderful group of young men, they're super loyal and they went with their coach and well, I mean, you look at the guys on our roster, right? Like let's talk, like all the ones that we brought in either had graduated from the university they were at, right? So they had an extra year that allowed them to do something, or their coach either got fired or left, right? So I mean, you talk about like loyalty. Like I got a great group of dudes there, and they're working really, really hard, and they're trying to put into just a few months what some of the teams have multiple years to do. And you see a lot of this, but for any fans, like the ones who are any people who are reaching out and saying negative things to these guys, man, shame on you. Shame on you. We watched this on the way up. We watched the ESPN 30 for 30 broke, and I've seen it multiple times. But the thing that stood out to me this time was all of the athletes talked about the pressure that built when they got money, right? The first few times I watched it, it was about how they just wasted their money. But this time what really stuck out was the pressure that they face when they have money, because they feel like, well, I've got to try and deliver something now because I'm being paid. And these young guys, they're feeling that pressure, right? And for fans, so-called fans, to like add on top of that, that's a crime, man. That's just terrible. And those aren't real K-State fans. Like they definitely are not our people and with us and what we're about.
So that's what Jerome Tang had to say after the game last night. Now, I'm of two schools of thought on this, and I want to start with this side of it because I have talked about what I believe is Jerome Tang's greatest strength as a leader of a program, and it is his ability to communicate with and connect with people. And I think you have seen that not just even necessarily with his roster. I think you look at the impact that he has made in the campus community, and you see that strength. In his first year on campus, before he'd ever won a game, never mind coached a game, he helped K-State win a battle they'd been fighting for years over the bleep KU chant, right? If you've been to a game that is not the Kansas game, and I think that this is a bit of an uneasy piece regarding the chant, because I think that K-State administration would like it gone entirely. But if you've been to a game that is not the Kansas game, you don't hear it anymore. You don't hear it anymore. The chant is KSU now, unless KU is in town, and then it's the explicit one. And I'm not defending that necessarily, other than to say college kids like to curse loudly in public. I remember being 19 years old. I thought that was really fun and subversive. So I get it. But Jerome Tang was able to make an impact and communicate with the student body and say, let's not do this. And they don't do it anymore. And then last year, after Naquan Tomlin was dismissed from the team, I don't want to drag up everything that went into that, but it was an extremely unpopular decision, right? And there were a lot of people that wanted K-State University president Richard Linton's head on a pike. And there were students that were going to protest, and there were chants during the game. Jerome Tang helped bring the temperature down after Tomlin was dismissed from the team. And the message both times from Jerome Tang was the same. Lift us up. There's something that Jerome Tang said at a press conference during the NCAA tournament run 2 years ago that has really stuck with me. It resonated with me so deeply. It made me more aware of my behavior in some ways, which is not a thing you commonly say about something a college sports coach says at the podium. But he said something that I still think about. And I think it's something that really defines who Jerome Tang is and what he's about. He said, and he may have been citing or what's the word I'm looking for here? Simplifying, paraphrasing. That's the word. He may have been paraphrasing something from scripture here, which he does often. But he said something to the effect of, you have the choice to speak life to people or speak death to people. And Jerome Tang's choice is always to choose life. He believes with all his heart in speaking life to people. So his message is consistent. It is consistent from before he ever coached a game at Kansas State to last night after that heartbreaking loss to Drake. The message is the same. Lift us up. Lift yourselves up. Lift up the university. Chant the good things about KSU and not bleep KU. Lift yourself up. Lift up this team. Don't protest over someone who's not with the team anymore. Get behind the guys who are. That's the message. That's what Jerome Tang believes. But here's the other side of this. And it's a side that I think is entirely valid for K-State fans. There are times when the message is correct and the messenger is wrong. There are also times when the messenger is correct and the message is correct and the timing is wrong. And after losing a game to a mid-major team, after falling behind by 20 in the first 10 minutes of what is essentially a home game, to fall to 6-4 in non-conference play in a season where a very expensive roster was expected to be a whole lot better than this, people don't want to hear it, man. People don't want to hear about the pressure your players are under, what the NIL money does to those players, what kind of pressure it puts them under. They don't want to hear about that. They want results. They want to see you win. They don't want to hear about how hard it is or the challenges that come with it, even if that's valid and correct. They don't want to hear about it. You're not interested in hearing about the labor pains. You want a baby. Show me a baby. Show me some wins. Show me results, particularly if you are someone who has donated to an NIL collective at Kansas State. That's your money on the floor, going 6-4 and losing to Drake. And this veers dangerously close to the kind of stuff I was just saying yesterday that Jerome Tang has done well to avoid. The late-stage Bruce Weber stuff, the begging, the pleading, copping pleas. Pleading with the fan base to understand. Now, Jerome Tang is right. Everything he said is right. Yes, I am sure that there are guys on that roster who are feeling pressure maybe they've never felt in their college careers. That Coleman Hawkins is probably one of those guys. And yes, it is awful what he and his teammates have to deal with on social media. It's savage on social media anymore. People broadly are unhappy. And a lot of those people choose to take out their unhappiness. And I'm not just saying, oh, they're unhappy because their team is losing. I'm saying, like, people are unhappy broadly. And they take out all that unhappy on other people, trying to bring them down, make them feel worse. It's all right. The message is correct. The timing is wrong. Jerome Tang had said that earlier in his press conference earlier this week and said something along the lines of, you know, we've got to get these guys to understand that they don't need to feel this pressure, that they're great players and we believe in them and that the fans believe in them and we're going to get this thing right. We're going to start playing better basketball. There's a way and a time to deliver that message that will resonate. Last night was the wrong time for it. And I'll be interested to hear what Tim Fitzgerald has to say about that when we have him on at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, because, again, nobody has his finger more firmly on the pulse of Emaw Nation, if you will, than Tim Fitzgerald. And I'll be curious to ask him how that press conference and that particular remark went over last night, because I understand why it didn't go over well, even if I think he's 100% right to come to bat for his guys, particularly his guy, period, Coleman Hawkins. But we're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. And on the other side, we're going to talk about the game itself, because it was a really good basketball game. Like, it was entertaining. I mean, maybe not the first 10 minutes if you were a K-State fan. That was an entertaining 45 minutes of basketball at the T-Mobile Center last night. And even in defeat, you see the path forward. You see the rotation starting to crystallize. You kind of have an idea what the best five is going to look like, what the best version of K-State will look like. And it's a team that I think if they play the way they did in the final 35 minutes last night, they're going to win plenty of Big 12 games. Now, plenty, is that enough? Maybe not. But I also don't think they're going 2-18 in the conference either. Also, an interesting comparison with K-State and other teams that have turned over their rosters as much as K-State did this past offseason. Most of those other teams that have done that kind of going through the same things that K-State is going through right now. We'll discuss that next. Tim Fitzgerald joined us bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Lots of Chiefs to get to this hour and next. A whole jam-packed 3 hours of 580 Sports Talk is just getting underway here on 580 WIBW. .335 on 580 Sports Talk. So good to be with you on this Wednesday. I'm Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis will be along shortly. So Back to the K-State game last night, the loss to Drake in the Wildcat Classic. A couple of comments from the YouTube live chat, first and foremost. First, Mark B says Coleman Hawkins getting roasted in social media unfairly, in my opinion. He was not going to be a 20-10 guy coming in. He's more the glue guy. I've been saying something very similar, Mark, that he's not a guy who has to score 20 to help his team win, because he can move the ball. He can be a table setter. He can be a defender that can help you. He can guard just about 2 through 5 on the floor. He can guard the perimeter. He can guard the interior and hold his own. That's exactly what he is. And, typically, like in the NBA, glue guys don't get star money. But Coleman Hawkins, in relative terms, in terms of the NIL space, he got star money and hasn't delivered a star performance. And it is fair to say that. It is not fair to say that you wish he would break his leg, obviously. I don't think anybody listening to this program, I certainly hope nobody listening to this program, would agree that the latter were acceptable. Mark also says that Ben McCollum's got 4 of his guys from Northwest Missouri State in the Drake roster. They're playing like they know the system, because they do. Yeah, that was a team that looked confident in their process throughout the 45 minutes of basketball, and a K-State team that had to gain confidence as they went along. Didn't have any confidence in the first 10 minutes. Then when shots started falling, what made the difference was C.J. Jones catching a bit of a heater from deep, and then you could see that was the fuse that lit the flame. And K-State was a different basketball team once the shots started going in. Now, any coach will tell you, you can't let your offense dictate your defense. You can't. You still got to guard, even if shots aren't going in. If anything, that should increase your urgency on that side. But too often, teams let the success of their offense dictate their defense. They start hanging their heads, and the defensive effort wanes a little bit. I think you saw that in the first 10 minutes. I think in the last 35, you saw K-State gain some of that confidence and start playing a lot better. John P. says K-State needs to figure out how to run an offense. They have about a week to do it. Says, I don't think the 5-out is right for K-State. Most K-Staters want to see a more physical, rigid style with crisp passes, rebounding, and relentless defense. I think we saw the defense. I think we saw some better ball movement, some better, penetration in that 5-out offense at times. They're going to be bigger, more physical teams that K-State plays. That'll make it harder to get to the rim, and they're going to need a solution as far as that goes. And the three-point shooting is going to be part of that, which K-State only made 33% of their threes last night. They were 7 of 21. I think Drake was 9 of 16. Which was pretty remarkable. Most of that was the Mascari kid. I do think that rebounding was critical again, and K-State wasn't good enough on the glass, and they've got to get better. And Jerome Tang knows that. He harped on it in his pregame press conference the day before, and it wasn't good enough. And that's why you saw, trying Moby Ike Garuka for a spell, giving Taj Manning some minutes, anything to get a little more size, a little bit more energy on the glass. And they did not have enough of that in that regard last night. One of the reasons they lost. Another reason, they go 9 of 18 from the free throw line. Coleman Hawkins was an 80% foul shooter last year at Illinois. He went 2 for 6 at the stripe in overtime. And those misses were short, which tells me he might have been gassed. And they always say that you expend more energy having to come back in a game like that. And so was K-State a little bit more on fumes maybe? Did Drake have a little bit more juice in the extra session? That's certainly possible. But I watched that game. I couldn't help but feeling it almost would have been less frustrating just in a vacuum if they had gotten blown out, which looked like it was on the verge of happening the first 10 minutes. And then you just say, all right, man, swing and a miss. This team doesn't have it in them, and maybe Jerome Tang can't get it out of them. And if he can't, then what are you going to do? Because that's the coach they got. These are the players they got, and maybe it's just not in them. But then in the last 35 minutes, it's in them. You saw the ball move. You saw the shots drop. You saw the defense ratchet up. They ended up winning the turnover battle last night. The energy, the desire, the ability to guard, the ability to score are there. But I have 2 big questions. One of them is this, and Tang pointed the finger squarely where it belonged last night at himself. He says he's got to do a better job with his teams at the end of games. K-State had two possessions in the final minute of regulation last night, and those possessions were revoltingly bad. Like, bad. You don't get a good look at the end of the game because you've got one option, and it's a Brendan Hausen three-pointer, and Drake covered it up because they respect Hausen as a shooter, even though he wasn't having a very good shooting night. And so when that was blown up with 5 seconds left in a tie game, there was no plan B. Nobody went to the rim. There was no outlet pass to try and get a cleaner look. There was no movement off the ball. It was a terrible play. And too often, last year it stood out too, that there were a lot of end of game sets that were just had no chance to work. And that to me is the most glaring weakness of the Jerome Tang coaching staff is their late game designed offense. I called a timeout to draw that up. Called a timeout for that. And it had no chance. So yeah, that does have to get better. We're in year 3 of Jerome Tang as a head coach. He knows he messed up. So I'm not speaking out of school here. This isn't, unfounded criticism. And I think Jerome Tang would be the first to say, yeah, I got to be better in those late game situations. But yeah, you do. Because that game could have been won in regulation. And that was the time to win it. When Drake was reeling, overtime probably felt like a reprieve for the team that blew a 20-point lead in regulation. And the other thing is the problem that I have had from the beginning. Since the LSU game, this has stood out. Who's the alpha dog? Who's going to take this team by the scruff of the neck? There was one possession. And I don't remember, I didn't timestamp it in the game or anything. But it was late in the second half. And I think every player on the court for K-State passed up an open three-point look. And drove and kicked to an open shooter who then shot faked and drove and kicked. And shot fake, drive, and kick. Somebody's got to have the stones to say, I'm getting us 3 right here, right now. I'm going to take the shot. I'm going to get to the rim. I'm going to get fouled. But this is on me. You can have more than one. They coexist with each other. You can have more than one. The Elite 8 team did. The Weber's Elite 8 team with Barry Brown and Dean Wade. Brown was the A1 alpha, certainly, but Dean Wade wasn't afraid of the big moment. Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel should be those guys for K-State. And I think it's in them. I hope that Hawkins taking and making that tying 3 at the end of overtime was a step in that direction, but that's what they've got to figure out. One other thing I wanted to say to kind of put a bow on this until we talk to Tim Fitzgerald about it, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Evan Miyakawa, who covers college basketball, writes about college basketball, did the digging on the season performance so far for teams that have completely flipped over their rosters. And it's based on his metrics, his evanmia.com, his metric and his rankings. There are, I'm doing a little bit of back of the napkin math, 17 teams in America that returned less than 25% of their minutes. High majors. So these are your P4s, your AAC, your Big East. 17 teams that built their rosters around almost entirely newcomers. Kansas State's actually on the high end of returners' minutes in this group. They returned 21% of their minutes from last year. Most of that's Gasson, right? So, but like Kentucky is in this group. Kentucky, Louisville, USC, West Virginia, DePaul, and California didn't return any minutes from last year. Vanderbilt only returned 1% of their minutes. Oklahoma State is on the high end of this. They returned 21% of their minutes. But there are 17 teams in America who have basically flipped their rosters from last year to this year. And of those teams, so far at this point in the season, 9 of those 17, including Kansas State, are performing worse than their preseason projections would have suggested. Louisville, USC, Cal, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, TCU, Washington, K-State, and Oklahoma State are performing worse than expected. Only 4 teams in that group are performing better than expected. Kentucky, West Virginia, Illinois, Arizona State. Interesting to note, 2 of those are Big 12 teams. The other 4 are performing roughly as expected. That's DePaul, Memphis, Rutgers, and Michigan. But that sample goes to show you that Kansas State is not unique in struggling to meet early season expectations with the guys they have on hand, with an entirely new roster. It's not easy. It's a lot tougher to pull it off than Jerome Tang maybe made it look 2 years ago when they went to the Elite Eight. And again, that was not a team where it was really smooth sailing. Like, if you remember that team, the primary difference was they made the shots at the end of close games. Like, K-State has losses to Drake and to Liberty by 1 possession, right? Those are 2 of their 4 losses. But in that Elite Eight season, they had a game they had to rescue in the Cayman Islands where they tied the game late in regulation and then won it late in overtime. Keontae Johnson had a falling down shot that bounced in to win the game. The Wichita State game very nearly got away from them at Bramlage. They were kind of fortunate to make the big shot and win that one late. Those are the fine margins, but it did not, by any measure, really click for K-State until they got to conference play. And it better be a rerun this year. Otherwise, this team's not going to the NCAA tournament. We'll take a break, come back. Day 3 of Mahomes' ankle watch. We'll tell you what we know next on 580 Sports Talk. 351 on 580 Sports Talk. We'll get back into K-State with Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com. He'll join us at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. Got plenty of Chiefs to get to in the 4 o'clock hour. Day 3 of Mahomes' ankle watch. Number 15, a full participant in practice today with that ankle injury. But again, as yesterday, it was a light practice day for the Chiefs. They're managing their players with, of course, the short turnaround into not just this game, but the Christmas Day game as well. So light practice. Mahomes a full participant. Hollywood Brown, Creed Humphrey, Juwan Taylor, Harrison Butker, also full participants for a second straight day. DJ Humphries and Shamari Connor, DNPs for a second straight day with their respective injuries. We'll take a break, come back, play One Gotta Go to wrap up this hour of 580 Sports Talk. One gotta go time here on 580 Sports Talk as Spencer Dupuis is in with us. Spencer, I'm giving you the following 4 deposed starting quarterbacks. You got to bring 3 of them to camp. Let's say you get an expansion team, a 33rd team, if you will. You got to bring 3 of these quarterbacks to camp to compete for your starting job next year. One of them enjoy the XFL, buddy. Those quarterbacks are Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, and Will Levis. One got to go.
Can we bring one in and transition him to a different position? Daniel Jones, transition to running back.
Okay.
Jameis Winston, bring him in. At least he can throw bombs, maybe to the other team a few times.
Sure. He got the pregame speeches. He got those under control.
And we always need that one guy that does weird things. So I guess we're bringing in Will Levis.
So Cousins, you're out on Cousins. You think you don't believe what you're essentially telling me is you don't think there's a way forward for Kirk Cousins to help a team in the league?
I don't think so. I think he's just too old, and that Achilles is not helping him.
Yeah, it's not been a good year for elder quarterbacks recovering from Achilles injuries. Turns out they compromise your mobility.
Father time's legit.
And when you weren't all that mobile to begin with, right?
Yeah.
For me, it'd be Will Levis. I just don't think the decision-making will ever get there. Daniel Jones is like the epitome of a backup. Him and Jameis Winston will play in the league, I think, for a long time yet to come. And I don't know. Still got a soft spot for...
Jameis already has. So.
Yeah, he really has. I still got a soft spot for Kirk, I guess. So now I'm out on Levis, even with the Mayo commercials. That should have been a red flag. This guy talking about putting mayonnaise in his coffee, and you think he's going to make the right reads and the right throwing decisions when he's doing that with mayonnaise? Come on. We all should have seen it coming. Up next on 580 Sports Talk, what is the Chiefs' identity on offense? And Tim Fitzgerald joins us next hour. Let's get it. Hour number 2 of this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. So great to be with you. Thanks for hanging out with us on your hump day afternoon here on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. And, of course, on our video stream on YouTube. The channel is 580 Sports Talk. I'm hearing reports of an increased subscriber base. We're up to 695
Let's
as
go!
of today. 5 away from the 700 mark. Who will help us get closer today? Who will be our heroes to get us closer to that round number? It is all we want for Christmas is 700 subscribers. Will you be next? If you have not subscribed to the YouTube page, go do that over at youtube.com. 580 Sports Talk's YouTube channel. And watch the show. If you haven't watched the video stream, what better time to start than today? You can be a part of the live chat throughout the show, interact with us, interact with your fellow listeners. It's a great time and a great way, we think, to experience the show. Obviously, if you are driving around and listening to us on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, or online at 580WIBW.com or whatever streaming radio app is your choice, don't watch us and drive. I would say don't do that.
Yeah.
I would encourage you not to do that.
But do subscribe when you can, because the summer bit is coming back.
Oh, yeah?
You know what the summer bit is?
What is the summer bit?
When Brendan's away,
Oh, that's true.
the subscribers
That's
grow.
That's not that's a summer bit. That's all the time bit.
I guess that's true.
Every time Brendan left the show, we bumped our subscriber number. So
if we can hit 700,
let's get to
before he comes
700
back.
before Brendan comes back. Yeah, that's the new goal for sure. That's Spencer Dupuis, by the way. I'm Dan Lucero. Brendan remains on paternity leave. We've got you for the next 2 hours here on the program, taking you up to K-State women's basketball tonight. The number 13 team in the country takes on New Mexico State in their final non-conference game before the start of Big 12 play. 6 o'clock pregame, 6:30 tip-off at Bramlage Coliseum. Jeffrey's got it right. Pull over and subscribe. That's right. If you are driving around, pull over now. Put your hazards on. Fire up the YouTube app on your phone and then subscribe and then get back on the road.
It's like that car dealership, or car brand that used to do the sign and drive event, and then people took it literally, so they did the sign then drive event.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, exactly. We gotta make sure. I don't think we have any like liability or anything like that, but yeah, just in case. Anyhow, thanks for being with us. Thanks for interacting with us in the YouTube live chat. If you are indeed watching on YouTube today, if you watch on Facebook, you can do that too. At WIBW News on Facebook. You can leave us comments in there as well. And we see those, and drop us a line. Let us know what you think as we go along throughout the show today. Coming up later on this hour, Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, joins us. We'll get his thoughts on K-State's loss to the Wildcat Classic last night, Jerome Tang and Coleman Hawkins' post-game remarks, and where things go from here for that program. Also, check in on K-State's efforts in the transfer portal on the football side, and what Fitz expects in the Rate Bowl next week. This will be the last time we get a chance to talk to Fitz before K-State's bowl game. They take on Rutgers in the Rate Bowl next Thursday in Phoenix. That is a 4:30 kickoff Central Time, 2:30 pregame. You'll hear it right here, of course, on 580 WIBW FM 104.9 from the K-State Sports Network. Also coming up this hour, 2 new stories on what is wrong with you, including one from the world of sports to get to. But I wanted to start with the Chiefs. First, we saw this at the top of the hour, but what's the term I'm looking for? Best wishes and fare thee well to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, waived by the Chiefs earlier this week. He's heading home. He has signed with the New Orleans Saints, of course.
Or the Chiefs South.
Yeah, kind of. You know, they've got more ex-Chiefs than probably any other team in the league, I would say. I haven't done the digging on that.
I mean, it's at least
threw that
5 or 6, I think. I saw it on Twitter when I saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire signed, because you have
Colin Saunders is there, Tyrann Mathieu, Willie Gay, yeah, signed this offseason,
and one other player, I can't remember who it is. Oh, MVS.
Yeah, Marquez Valdez-Scantling's there now too. That's correct. So yeah, they do have a lot of ex-Chiefs there. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of course, from Baton Rouge, played at LSU, so he gets a chance to head home and resume his NFL career. And wish him the best. Hope it's a good ending for Clyde, who, again, by all accounts, we can say, and it's valid to say, that he did not live up to expectations of being a first-round pick, but a great teammate and a world champion twice over. And you get one of those rings, that's you forever. You're a champion forever. So, good luck to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I also believe he has to have, through the end of the season, he has to be on a roster, and then he can get health care.
Is that right?
I believe there's something, I saw that after he was released, was he has to have accrued so many seasons. So glad that he got signed so he can get, health care for the time being.
That's another element to this.
The human element.
Exactly. That this is his 5th year in the league, and I don't know all the ins and outs of the NFLPA and their pension, but that would make sense if 5 years in the league were a benchmark. That Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a few games away from getting there. So hopefully he can get there as a member of the Saints this season. Anyhow, get to the thing I want to talk about with regards to the Chiefs. I was listening to the podcast I really enjoy, The Right Time with Bomani Jones. He former ESPNer, does his podcast 3 times a week, has good guests. I enjoy listening to him. I think he's pretty sharp. I'm entertained by his takes. I'm not. My podcast diet is not what it used to be. But back in the day, Spencer, there was a brief interregnum where I did not live here in Topeka. I'm like Grover Cleveland, right? I guess there's a more contemporary reference for Grover Cleveland now, or at least there will be January 20th of next year. But I'm like Grover Cleveland. I've had 2 non-consecutive terms at WIBW. So between 2020 and 2022, I was living out in Northwest Kansas. And my fiance was not. She was living here. And she wasn't my fiance when I moved. She became my fiance. But so I used to drive between Colby, Kansas and Topeka, Kansas, like a lot. Like Friday afternoon after work, and then Sunday night to get back for a work week on Monday morning. So that was 8 hours in a car on a weekend. So I listened to a lot of podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. When you're doing that. And I know you've done like long distance relationship before, so you gotta understand like the dynamics behind that. So anyway, used to listen to a lot more podcasts than I get to listen to anymore. But Bomani Jones's podcast is one that I really enjoyed. And he was talking about watching the NFL on Sunday and referred to the Chiefs game and said one thing that I could not argue with, that for portions of the game, wide swaths of Sunday's game, the Chiefs, his word, but also one I've used, looked like cheeks. Cheeks. As in butt cheeks. That's what the Chiefs looked like on Sunday for the better part of their game. And Bomani's conclusion was that the Chiefs don't do anything well on offense. And that's where you hear that and like, okay, I pay a little closer attention to the Chiefs than the national pundits do. I watch every snap. And my tendency is to say, well, now wait a second, and get a little defensive, dig the heels in a little bit. So I said, well, now wait a second. Then I thought to myself, wait a minute. What do the Chiefs do well on offense? And so that became a segment today. What do the Chiefs do well on offense? So more broadly, what is the Chiefs' offensive identity? Spencer, I want to ask you, like gut reaction, when I pose this question to you, what is the identity of the Chiefs' offense? What would you say it is?
Pass first.
A pass first offense. Okay.
Goes away from the run.
Does certainly the last 3 weeks has tended to abandon the run. But like what? Put it to you this way. Here's another way of asking the question. When the Chiefs have to make a play, have to sustain a drive, have to score, have to rally, that's when you see a team get to what it's about, right?
Yeah.
And I think what this team is about is Patrick Mahomes. And, and like that's a simplistic way to put it, but it really does feel like right now the identity of the Chiefs is, well, Mahomes will figure something out. Pat, you got us. Yeah. Patrick, do something. Help, Patrick. Third and 8. 6-man pressure. We need you to pull something out of your Clavin and keep the chains moving.
All right, I got my guy Travis. I'm going to tell him to just run around. I can't do
Was
the
that a Patrick Mahomes
That was
impression?
very bad.
Yeah, don't do that again.
I mean, he just tells Trav to go find a way to get open.
I'm saying this as your friend, Spencer. No more Patrick Mahomes impressions. It's impossible. It's impossible. He is impossible to imitate. But that is what feels like the Chiefs' identity to me, is Patrick Mahomes, save us. And it used to be a lot of that, right? Like, it used to be, you felt like, oh, well, Mahomes will find Kelsey and they'll keep it moving. That's been a little less reliable this year because Travis Kelsey is not real fast, not real fleet of foot anymore. Not able to, like, he can still find the crease in the zone, but it takes him a little longer to get there.
Yeah.
And he's not creating more yards after he gets there.
I mean, I think the best part of Travis Kelsey's game is right now is his freelancing.
Yeah.
When he's not expected to run a certain route a certain way, when just get open.
Yeah, and he's always been great at that. But
like, he knows where the sticks are.
Right.
Like, that's one thing I will say about him is, like,
that veteran savvy, right?
Yes, and it happened a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember exactly what play, but it was late in the game, and they found him on a 3rd down and 7, and he got 9 yards just past the sticks. I can't remember exactly when it was, but like, that's the veteran savvy in him that not a lot of the other players have. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins,
Sure.
I feel like, is another guy trending in that way, that you see those things to get the extra yards and to be smart when it comes to the plays that he makes.
Yeah, and being a reliable option, but they're still, working him into the offense as that goes along. When I dug into the numbers, I think it really lent credence to the idea that the Chiefs' identity right now is Patrick Mahomes will figure something out.
Yeah. Because
there's a difference, a vast difference between what the nerd numbers will tell you and the not nerd numbers will tell you. I say nerd stats. These are pretty widely accepted stats anymore from people. Like, if you talk football with anybody on the internet, they're going to cite things like success rate or expected points added or EPA per play. We have cited those stats repeatedly on this show. They're not perfect stats, end all be all stats. They're not the law. They're not the final word. But I do think, like any stat, it helps you with an understanding. It puts things in context of what it is that you're seeing. Because when you watch the Chiefs on offense, Spencer, it doesn't feel like a good offense. Like, watching it, right? Like, when you watch the Chiefs, you'll see one drive a game, maybe 2, where it feels like a good offense.
Yeah, like, they've started games recently where I feel like they look good and then they just don't.
Yeah.
Or, like, you see the multifaceted part of the team on the first few drives and then they go away from it. Like, you see those reverses, the end arounds, you see the running, the trying to use the run to open up the pass, and then it's just pass. But I will say, something that I heard today, I told you about it, was AQ Shipley was on the Pat McAfee show.
Yeah,
and he does
and,
his,
and I want to get to this later on in the show.
But there's this thing that he said the reason that they've been so successful is, while it looks like they aren't, is because of the trick plays they're able to throw in there, the end arounds, the reverses that buck the trend of just running the ball, where they ran like Xavier Worthy getting that touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that's not going to be a part of your normal game plan.
Not your meat and potatoes.
Yes.
No.
But then it happens and they score off of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's where they've gotten their explosive plays.
Yes.
So kind of the, I don't want to call them trick plays, because it's not like we're talking about flea flickers or double reverses, but your plays.
Your non-conventional plays.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So that's part of the discussion here, certainly. But I wanted to point out the difference here. So someone like the conventional stats, yards per play in the NFL, the Chiefs are tied for 20th in yards per play, 5.1 yards per play. They're tied for 21st in yards per pass with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. They are tied for 21st in yards per pass. They are tied for 27th in yards per carry. So those numbers right there would suggest a bottom third offense in the league. Then you get to the less conventional, the nerd numbers, if you will. Expected points added per play, the Chiefs are 9th in the league. They're 10th in expected points added per dropback, 8th in expected points added per rush. They are 3rd in success rate. What is success rate? Again, a quick explainer in case you've maybe you're just joining us for the first time today, or it's not a stat you're familiar with, or maybe you heard us explain it one time and you forgot. Success rate in football depends on what percentage of yards you gain on each play based on what down it is. So if you get 40% of the yards you need for a first down on first down, it's a successful play. So a 4-yard run on first down or a 5-yard pass is a successful play, just as a 10-yard run or pass would be a successful play. It's either successful or it's not. It's a binary. 60% of the yards on second down that you need are a successful play. So a 4-yard run on 2nd and 10 would not be successful, but a 7-yard pass on 2nd and 10 would be. Or if it's 2nd down and 6, a 3-yard run would not be successful. A 4-yard run would. And then 3rd down, it's do you convert or not? Same with 4th down. That makes for a successful play. And the Chiefs have one of the most successful offenses in the league. They are 3rd in success rate. The only offenses that are more successful more often are the Lions and the Ravens. The Chiefs are 8th in drop back success rate, and they are 2nd in rush success rate. And a big part of that is that there is only one team in the NFL converting more than half of their 3rd downs, and that team is the Kansas City Chiefs. We used 3rd and Mahomes as a bit of a joke over the first few years of Mahomes' career, where it felt like it genuinely did not matter how many yards the Chiefs had to get on 3rd down. They were going to convert because they had Patrick Mahomes, and he'd figure out a way to convert on 3rd down. The 3rd and Mahomes still exists for this team. A play that in particular stands out from the Cleveland game was the 3rd down conversion where Mahomes had to be flushed from the pocket, and he kind of threw into one-on-one coverage, and Noah Gray made a really nice catch. Play was much about Gray as about Mahomes, but Mahomes was under the gun, feeling the heat, and got that throw off and put it in a spot where Noah Gray could make a play and keep the drive moving on a 3rd and long. So while the Chiefs down to down are not explosive, we've said this a lot this year, they're not explosive. Like yards per play, bottom 3rd of the league. But success rate, they keep ticking along, churning it out, converting 3rd downs, moving the chains. They didn't really do a great job of that on Sunday against the Browns because Matt Araiza punted 9 times. But do you know how many times Matt Araiza punted in the month of October? 6. So if you're not using your punter, like, again, success, that matters too. It matters that you are successful. It matters that you are efficient in that way. And this Chiefs offense being good at that, and the fact that they haven't turned the ball over very much. Again, they went another week, this past week, without turning the ball over. That means now that the Chiefs have turned the ball over 2 times in their last 6 games, and both of those came in the Buffalo game. And if you want to divide it even further from before and after the bye, it's 6 turnovers in 9 games compared to 8 turnovers in the first 5 games this season. So the Chiefs taking care of the ball, moving the sticks with more consistency than their opponent, and finishing drives with points more often than their opponents. They're 7th in the league in the total number of drives ending in a score of any kind. 44.4% of the Chiefs' drives end in a score. Only 6 teams are more successful than that. So the divergence between the conventional numbers and the advanced numbers show you that this is a Chiefs team that is really dependent on 3rd down success. And that means they're really dependent on Patrick Mahomes. And I think that they are dependent on Mahomes in a way that they've maybe never been before. Like, it is more on his shoulders, I think, than it has ever been. Because the run game is not explosive, because the passing game has not been particularly explosive, and some of that is Mahomes' fault. The offensive line has struggled. So what do you need to put yourself in a position to score? You need your quarterback to keep the chains moving on third down, and take care of the football. And Mahomes has done that on a very high level this year. If the rest of his numbers show a quarterback having his worst year statistically, it's the taking care of the ball and the finishing or the continuing drives on third down and the finishing those drives with points that have allowed the Chiefs to go to 13-1. And I got to tell you, I feel like there are worse identities to have than let's ask the best quarterback ever to keep it ticking for us. So that is what I think the Chiefs' identity is at the end of the day. And sometimes you talk about what a team's offensive identity is, and you think, well, is that sustainable in January? Like, can you win playoff games with that as your identity? Like the Dolphins, right?
Yeah.
We've had that conversation about the Dolphins over time. Does their offensive identity work in January? It doesn't even work in November. What the hell do you mean does it work in January? And the Bills being super reliant on Josh Allen the last couple of years, like particularly last year, they were super reliant. It had to be Josh Allen making the play. Was that sustainable for them? Ultimately, it wasn't. This year, they look better than they ever have, and Josh Allen is going to win the MVP because it's not all him. He does have more playmaking support than he has had in his career. But for the Chiefs, this may be, even following last year with that miserable receiver core that the Chiefs had to deal with, this year might be the least support that Patrick Mahomes has ever had. And injuries obviously play a big role. And so do the struggles of the offensive line, and so does the diminished skill set of Travis Kelce. But this may be as reliant as the Chiefs have ever been on Patrick Mahomes. But if the question is, well, will that work in January? It's worked 3 times. And you've got the Lombardis and the Super Bowl MVPs to prove it, right? It's a lot to ask, but if anyone's capable, it's number 15. We're going to take a break, come back with some What Is Wrong With You after this with 580 Sports Talk. What is wrong with you time on 580 Sports Talk, where we have two new stories competing this afternoon. Try to take down our current weekly champion, the professional drinker, the gentleman who caused a multi-car crash in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, while driving with a .326 blood alcohol content. We did the math on this on Monday's show, Spencer. That would have won the National League batting title.
That's
Only
crazy.
Bobby Witt Jr. had a higher batting average than that man's BAC. But he told the police, listen, I'm a professional drinker. I'm a professional. Cops weren't buying it, obviously. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. Anyway, my story today, we're going to the world of sports. Where do you come down on mascots, Spencer?
What do you mean?
Like them, not like them? How do you feel?
I think there's good mascots and then there's bad mascots.
I think this is definitely true. I love mascots, but one of my formative experiences was getting to see who I believe to be the best mascot in sports, Rocky the Mountain Lion for the Denver Nuggets. I think he is the best, and that experience made me very much pro mascot. I like mascots. They bring me a lot of joy. Anyway, the Charlotte Hornets mascot brought somebody some joy. On Monday, there was a skit that was done at during the game between the Hornets and the Philadelphia 76ers. And apparently the crux of the skit was this, that the Hornets mascot was playing Santa Claus, and that he was going to prove how powerful his wish-granting abilities were. So these kids were going to be in the skit. And one of them was going to say, well, this is my wish. And Santa Buzz... Or no, he's Hugo. I'm sorry. He's not Buzz. He's Hugo. Hugo the Hornet. Hugo is going to reach into his bag and pull out exactly what that kid wanted. So there were a couple of kids involved in the skit, and the last kid was going to say, I'm really sad because my dad is moving my whole family to Philadelphia, and Hugo was going to produce a brand new dad for the kid wearing a Hornets jersey so that the kid could stay in Charlotte and be a Hornets fan or whatever. Nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Really, really stupid skit. Anyway, one of the kids who was participating, a 13-year-old kid, his role in it was to ask for a PlayStation 5. And Hugo reached into his sack and gave the kid a PlayStation 5. And as everybody was walking off the court after the skit, the PR guy or person in charge of events or in charge of, in-game
marketing
arena
in-game
entertainment, said, hey, I'm going to need that PlayStation back. Here's a Hornets jersey. I'm going to need that PlayStation back. So a clip of that exchange went viral on social media. The boy's uncle posted angrily about it on social media. And so then the Hornets had to issue a statement that said, quote, we simply put, we turned the ball over and we apologize. We have reached out to the family and are committed to not only making it right, but to exceeding expectations. We will be providing the fan with the PS5 that he should have taken home last night, along with a VIP experience to a future game. You may think that my what is wrong with you angle on this is, how could the Hornets do that? How could Hugo deny a kid a PlayStation 5? My what is wrong with you is actually, kid, you were chosen out of the stands to be a part of a skit. How did you think you were going to get a PS5 for being part of a skit? Did you think you were that lucky? Come on, man. Everybody got that one wrong. That's my story. What do you got today, Smith?
All right, we're going to go to South Florida, to Sunny Isles Beach, Florida. A South Florida man is facing multiple felony charges after allegedly impersonating a New York City police officer, pulling a gun on a disabled scooter rider, and knocking the victim to the ground during a road rage incident. Authorities say the confrontation took place on Thursday on Collis Avenue in Sunny Isles Beach. According to police, the suspect, 41-year-old John Anthony Laura, was tailgating the victim while driving a black BMW 528i. When the victim asked Laura to back off, Laura allegedly pulled out a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun, pointed it at the victim, and threatened to kill him. He then claimed to be a New York City police officer, showing the victim a badge before kicking the victim's scooter, causing him to fall. Multiple witnesses corroborated the victim's account, police said. The next day, officers located Laura driving the same BMW in the area despite having a suspended license. He was taken into custody, and police found the gun in the vehicle's center console. During the interview, he initially denied pointing the firearm, but later admitted to drawing it, though he claimed he never aimed it directly at the victim. He also he alleged the victim hit him with the scooter and was the one impersonating an officer. A claim police did not find credible. He was arrested on charges of impersonating a law enforcement officer in the commission of a felony, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and battery on a person with a physical disability. He was also cited for knowingly driving with a suspended license.
So does he just keep the badge on him? Like, not surprised that people keep guns on them. One, it is legal, and two, it's America. But number two, like, does he just keep the badge on him so he can act a fool and scare people with the gun and say, yeah, I can do this because I'm an officer of the law?
Yeah,
that's a wild move. I think he wins today.
Yeah.
I can't put him ahead of the professional drinker, though.
No.
Man, you can't tell the cops you're a professional drinker. The 326 BAC. Holy Moses. Tim Fitzgerald joins us next on 580 Sports Talk. It was not a Kansas State victory at the T-Mobile Center last night in the Wildcat Classic against Drake. Here to talk about that and all other K-State athletic happenings, the great Tim Fitzgerald, publisher at GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Fitz joins us every Wednesday at this time on the Floating Place Wine and Spirits hotline for the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, I want to start with the game first. K-State loses to Drake 73-70 in overtime. And it sort of feels like it might wind up being a microcosm for this season where if you just watched the last 35 minutes, you could recognize the seeds of a pretty good basketball team for Kansas State. They outplayed Drake for that stretch. The problem was the first impression, and it's hard to shake first impressions. It's been hard for this K-State team to shake its first impression, and it was hard for them to shake going behind 29-9 in the first 10 minutes of that game last night.
It was a disaster. It was awful. As I said on Twitter or X or whatever Elon's calling it, this team really struggles offensively, and they balance that with being bad defensively, so they're really balanced. They were awful. lack of effort, lack of focus, lack of plan, lack of everything you need to be successful. And then they found it. It was almost like they got angry and started playing with more enthusiasm, attacking the rim, defending better, but they have problems sustaining that. And we saw the kind of nonchalant defense all the way to that last possession overtime when you let a guy that's just an absolute dead-eye shooter get a clean look. How does that even happen? How are you not running everyone at him? I'm at a loss for words with what's going on with this team, but I'll say this, back to your point. There was a glimpse of a team that could come together. And that's really the first time I felt like they presented something sustainable. Because at St. John's, they started hot and then they just fell apart. So that might have just been a moment in time when they were really good. This time they looked like they were actually interested in playing together on both ends of the floor, but they just weren't good enough to make up that 20-point deficit and sustain it. And credit to Drake. That's an incredibly well-coached team. They know who they are. They know what they do. They know their weaknesses and cover that up a lot better than Kansas State does. And they deserve to win.
To your point about the start of the game where Kansas State couldn't make anything and the Mascari kid from Drake couldn't miss anything, and you go behind by 20, and coaches at every level will say you can't let your offense dictate your defense. You can't let offensive struggles drag you down on the defensive end of the floor. It's something that coaches at every level of the game, from high school to the NBA, have to fight and resist with their guys. And it seemed like when C.J. Jones hit a couple of threes, that's when the light bulb really went on. And you saw defensively that this team could trap. They could bother with length and with their speed, with Doug McDaniel on the perimeter, with Coleman Hawkins defending anywhere, any spot on the floor he wanted to. It sure felt like there was, again, a glimpse of a defensive identity that just needs to be there whether or not the shots are falling.
Yeah, they made a change in that part of that stretch that I thought was really interesting. They put Brendan Housen on the bench, and I love him. I love what he brings to the floor as a sniper. But I know Jerome Tang keeps saying he's a complete player, but his defense isn't good enough. And yet there he was covering the best player on the court last night in the final possession, and his defense showed itself. But during that stretch, they had him on the bench, and they had three guards out there, McDaniel and C.J. Jones, and they just kept going at him. They were relentless. And the speed of the game really took over for Kansas State. And they played like they had an identity for that period. And really, they seemed to understand what they needed to do. And this team always hasn't looked that way. They quite often look really confused, complacent. And if they were told what to run, they show a disinterest in running it, if there is anything to run. So hopefully this was a glimpse. They better win Saturday. I mean, Wichita State just lost at UMKC by 10. If they lose that game, they're going to lose their fans. And that's the God's honest truth, because these guys are getting paid a lot of money. These basketball players are getting paid a lot of money. And if they don't understand how that changes the equation of the relationship between the student body, the fan base in general, and the team, I don't know what to tell you. You're paid professionals. Go do your job. That's pretty much the outlook of fans right now that are watching this.
Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, joining us here on the Wildcat Wrap-Up on the Fleming Place Wine Spirits Hotline here on 580 Sports Talk. Go subscribe to 24/7 Sports, GoPowerCat.com. Subscriptions make great holiday gifts, I bet. Be a great thing to find in your stocking on Christmas morning. Anyhow, Fitz, what you just said sort of leads in nicely to what I want to ask about regarding the post-game press conference, Coleman Hawkins' comments, Jerome Tang's comments. I shared my thoughts on what I thought of what Jerome Tang had to say, and essentially it was right message, absolute wrong time from the head coach, but of a piece of everything that Jerome Tang is about, trying to lift up his team and believing in the power of not positive thinking, but positive speech. Anyhow, that's what he's been about since he helped get the Bleep KU chant replaced, before he started as a head coach. So that was what I felt about it. It was he's not wrong in anything that he's saying, and it is unfortunate that Coleman Hawkins and others are dealing with what they're dealing with on social media, but also not the time to maybe give that message. Maybe that's a message that goes down a little smoother, not after you lose in overtime to a mid-major. What was your thought?
Totally agree. I mean, he had a point, and yet corrupted that point by what looked like trying to create a distraction from that loss. Oh, don't look at the loss. Look at this tweet from this fan. And we've now, it apparently was on Instagram. My colleague Derek Young from my competition has tracked it down. It appears not to be a K-Stater at all. It appears to be gambling related because they just lost when they had -1 as the line. So if you're going to throw the K-State fan base under the bus, make sure you got the right fan base that's coming after you, because this looked like a gambler not related to K-State in any way, and it makes the timing of that discussion awful. Nothing changes the minds of K-State fans about the outcome of the game. Everyone agrees those are disgusting things to send any athlete, whether professional or not. It's disgusting to wish harm upon anyone over a game. But I think they use it as a crutch, Dan, and I thought it was really unfortunate and made the situation worse, because now you've told fans their opinions have no value because this one guy wished a player to break his leg. The opinions I'm seeing from fans are very fair. They're about effort. They're about execution. They're about coaching. They're about things within the realm of control of these players and not personal. And if those tweets are bothering, or if those social media posts are bothering them, put down your phone and get back in the gym, period.
We're speaking with Tim Fitzgerald to GoPowerCat.com. It's our weekly Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, publisher at GoPowerCat.com. Want to pivot to football, Fitz, and pivot to the news that DJ Giddens declared for the NFL draft over the weekend. It's a remarkable story. Like, I saw Giddens in high school at the same time. He was coming up at the same time as Devin Neal and Kai Thomas here out of Topeka, who's had a well-traveled college career. And certainly I believed wholeheartedly that Neal could be a star in college, and he became one. And I don't know that I would have made that bet about DJ Giddens, and yet here he is, third on the all-time rushing chart at K-State, and he's declaring early for the NFL draft. What will stand out in the memory when it comes to Giddens as being, another preferred walk-on local kid success story, development success story for this program in this era?
He did it with work, man. He showed up as exactly the type of player we thought. Let's go back to then when he was being recruited, because most of us talked about Devin Neal and Kai Thomas in the state. We weren't talking about DJ Giddens. And he showed up as a guy with potential. And we didn't know how much potential. But I think the most telling thing that DJ said in his time being interviewed with the media over the last year and a half, 2 years, and he hasn't said much, as you know, was before Deuce Vaughn left, he absolutely got everything out of Deuce in terms of advice and teaching that he could. And a lot of the things he does now were part of the progressions of the learning from Deuce Vaughn. This kid has become determined to learn in every facet, and has turned himself into, by using the resources around him, the strength program, the coaching, the players, and become what he is. And I'm really exceptionally proud of DJ Giddens at a level that, honestly, I haven't been proud of in a long time with a K-State player, because he went to work. And overcame a lot of stuff on the field and off. Is a very quiet, shy person. And he is a better person and an incredible football player for it.
The Rate Bowl coming up next Thursday. This will be our last chance to talk to you before K-State heads to Phoenix and plays Rutgers in the Rate Bowl. What are you most looking forward? Because we talked when the bowl matchup was announced. There's not like an obvious hook to this bowl game. Like last year, the hook was Avery Johnson's first start. And like the Texas Bowl against LSU, as we get to see Colin Klein call the plays. And, some bowl games have a hook. This game doesn't really have a hook. So what's the hook? Give us a hook, Fitz, is what I'm asking for. What will you be most interested in seeing? And maybe it's just a broad needing to end this season on a high note, but what is the hook for K-State in this game against Rutgers?
Trying to get that same good feeling coming out of the bowl that I think really helped this program in the off season. Now, something went wrong during the season, we can see, but this team did start 7-1, and the one was that loss at BYU when things just, I mean, if BYU had played the lottery that night, they were going to win.
Right.
Everything just fell in their favor, and they recovered from that, and then they just kind of started to drift. And so I hope this season can kind of set the tone again, power them into the off season. But I am interested in seeing some of these young guys. Yeah, it's not the quarterback, but how are they going to dole out the snaps at running back? How much will be Dylan Edwards? How much will be Joe Jackson or someone else? Are they going to continue to use Dylan as a running back? And I'm sure they will in this game because DJ going to the pros, but are they going to kind of maybe shift him to a combined receiver role? There's a lot of things going on here that I'm interested to see, and I will be interested to see what young players can step up and make something happen, and if K-State can stop a Big Ten running game, because we're told the Big 12 is soft and they don't compare to the Big Ten. Well, here we go. It's a 7-win team against an 8-win team. Let's see who wins.
Tim Fitzgerald covers Kansas State athletics, has his finger on the pulse of the K-State nation better than anyone else at GoPowerCat.com. Part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can check him out on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Don't tell him he should break his leg. That's not very nice. Tim Fitzgerald joins us every Wednesday on 580 Sports Talk for the Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, it is always a pleasure. Like we mentioned, the last time we talked to you this year, really, because we got holidays the next 2 Wednesdays. So until we meet again, Fitz, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll talk again soon.
It's cute, Dan. You don't think I'm calling you on Christmas because I am, buddy.
Hey, nothing would make me happier.
Thanks, pal.
Take it easy. That is Tim Fitzgerald. We'll take a break, come back, wrap up this hour of 580 Sports Talk after this. .456 on 580 Sports Talk. which means we've got 1 hour left of the program after the rollover at the top of the hour with some local news. We got K-State women's basketball coming up tonight. Nothing but good things to say about the Midi Cats so far. Still ranked number 13 in the country. They've got the Aggies of New Mexico State tonight. What do you know about New Mexico State, the Aggies?
Conference USA?
I think that's correct.
I think they moved into Conference USA, or no, that might be the Lobos.
No, that's New Mexico's still in the Mountain West.
Okay, then they are in the Conference USA.
Located in lovely Las Cruces, the second most populous city in the state of New Mexico. I didn't know it's the second most populous city. It is way south.
I do know that. I think it's the Lobos the Marshall played in the Gildan, New Mexico Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah, that is in college. That is at New Mexico Stadium. There's an intersection, and you've got the football stadium, the pit where the New Mexico basketball team plays, and then Isotopes Park, where the minor league team, Albuquerque Isotopes play. They're all in the same. They're all in the same like intersection, all same street corner. I've been to a game at Isotopes Park.
Interesting.
Back in the day, I played in a baseball tournament in Albuquerque when I was in high school. Pitched a game. It was 121 degrees that morning when I took the mound. I had never been happier to leave a game in the third inning than I was that day. I'll tell you what, I got shelled, brother. We got sports headlines. We're going to talk some Chiefs O-line. Spencer's got an interesting observation. And bowl season is underway. All that and more coming up in the final hour, 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Third and final hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. So glad you're with us. Thanks for hanging out on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online worldwide at 580WIBW.com. And on our live video stream, you can watch us. Hello, video viewers. Watch us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk is the name of the channel. You can also watch us on Facebook, WIBW News. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis with you for one more hour. Then we'll hand things off to the K-State Sports Network. Got some Mini Cats basketball tonight. K-State women are in action at Bramlage against New Mexico State. Final game before the start of conference play for K-State. They open conference play on Sunday. They take on the Bearcats of Cincinnati. And we will have the game for you tonight right here on your home for the Wildcats, 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. But in the meantime, we got one more hour of 580 Sports Talk for you. And in this hour, an interesting observation that Spencer saw about Joe Tooney's performance at left tackle on Sunday that I thought was interesting and worth discussing. So Spencer will give us that. And then wanted to talk about the idea that maybe the conversation around Trey Smith is going to be a little different following this season, because since this season began, really last offseason, knowing that Trey Smith is in the final year of his rookie deal, the conversation has been, well, can the Chiefs afford Trey Smith? Can they afford to pay him? And now I think the conversation might be, can they afford not to? Because that answer might be no, based on the play of the offensive line so far this season. So we'll get into that. Also, a full breakdown of something called the Art of Sports LA Bowl hosted by Gronk. I just let that roll around on your tongue like a fine wine. The Art of Sports LA Bowl hosted by Gronk.
That just means Gronk is putting up a bunch of money, right?
Well, I don't think he's like the head ref. No. I don't think he's going to be all-time QB, although I would so watch a bowl game if Gronk just like interjected himself like into the game. Like, hey, I'm playing tight end this series for Cal. Put me in, coach. Then I would watch that, no problem. There's a bowl game on right now. The Boca Raton Bowl is on right this second. I'm about to turn it on the station TV. Do you know who is playing? Without looking at the notes. Do you know who is playing in the Boca Raton Bowl?
It's on right now?
Yeah, it's on right now.
I know only because I saw on Twitter earlier talking about James Madison's third string quarterback, so JMU is playing.
JMU is playing. They are playing Western Kentucky.
Oh, good old WKU.
Western Kentucky and James Madison in the Boca Raton Bowl. That didn't even get a sponsor. Like, so I'm pretty resolutely like anti-sponsored things, right? Like, I don't like to say, what do you call it? GEHA Field at Arrowhead. I always say, if you're going to pay me to call it that, I'll call it that. But it's Arrowhead Stadium to me. Like, I will never refer to the stadium in Denver that stands on that particular patch of land that the current stadium stands on, which is saying the old stadium stood on. That is Mile High Stadium.
Yeah, but there's also been like 30 different names, I feel like, to that stadium.
Yes, there have. It was Invesco Field at Mile High, and then Sports Authority Field. Like 2 years after Sports Authority ceased to exist,
yeah,
they still had the naming rights. Now it's Empower Field, I think, at Mile High. No, it's Mile High Stadium.
It's okay. It's just like in Pittsburgh. It's Heinz Field.
Well, that was a corporate name. And
yeah,
then
but
they
still
changed the corporate name. But yeah, the new corporate name isn't as good as the old corporate name.
No, it's still Heinz Field to everybody I know.
Yeah, what is the
Acrisure Stadium?
Sure. Yeah. So like, I am like anti the sponsor. Like, the Browns play at Paul Brown Stadium, not Huntington Bank Stadium. Come on, let's be real. But I am the complete opposite when it comes to bowl games and their sponsors, because I really feel like referring to the bowl game by its full name with the sponsor really serves to highlight the ridiculousness of bowl season.
I went to a bowl in 2019 where Marshall played, I believe it was South Florida, and it was the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl.
One of the best of all time.
Doesn't Bad Boy Mowers sponsor another bowl?
I think they do. They sponsor something else.
Yeah. I got the press release like the next year when they announced that they had changed sponsors because I was on like the media list for the last year. And I was like, this is never going to be as good as Bad Boy Mowers. And they used to have like mower races between the head coaches.
So like Gasparilla Bowl, great name.
Yeah.
Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl.
That's a badass name.
Really puts it over the top. Like it really does. Like it underscores the silliness and the fact that these are for other people to make money.
Yes.
Essentially. So I like to refer to the full name. Like last night, oh yeah, I was watching the Frisco Bowl. No, the hell you weren't. You were watching the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. You ever been to a Scooters Coffee? We got a few here in town.
I have not. My girlfriend has, but I will tell you, Marshall played in that bowl last year. And I had no at the time, I had no clue what a Scooters Coffee was.
Was it sponsored by Scooters last year?
Yes.
Yeah, Scooters Coffee. It's a solid choice. I've enjoyed a drink or two, a little caffeine.
I prefer
boost
Dutch Bros, but
for
coffee.
that. Okay. Everybody's got their place, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We have a commenter, in the YouTube live chat, and welcome to Miss P. Kelsey, who's in on the YouTube chat today. The name of the bowl game for Miami, Ohio, and Colorado State. I am aware of this. Are you? Are you aware who is sponsoring the Arizona Bowl? And I mean who, as in
Snoop Dogg?
Yes.
I think I saw that when it came out.
It is the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl.
Well, the Arizona Bowl's been up for, I think it was the Barstool Sports Bowl at one point, wasn't it?
I'm sorry. I got the name wrong. I apologize. It's not the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl. It is the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl presented by Gin and Juice by Dre and Snoop. I love it so much. It's so ridiculous. It's so preposterous.
That might be the best thing about bowl season.
Also, I think this is our friend Greg Akagi commenting that Bad Boy Mowers now sponsors the Pinstripe Bowl, which makes more sense because you know why? The Pinstripe Bowl is played on grass.
Yeah.
Unlike the Gasparilla Bowl, which is played at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Well, no, they moved it.
Which is turf.
They moved it to Buck Stadium.
Did they play it at Raymond James after a while?
Yeah.
Because I know when
I went in 2019, it was at Raymond James.
When they first had the sponsorship, it was at Tropicana Field.
Yeah, because they changed it. Well, no, they had changed it.
Anyway.
Well, because it used to be the St. Pete Bowl.
This was the segment we were going to do to end the show, and we've just done it. We've just done it already. I'm going to have to come up with something else.
It's okay. We can talk. I got something to talk about in that other segment.
All right.
I put it down in the paper.
Hey, all right. Let's get into our 580 Sports Talk headlines, though. That's how we usually start the 5 o'clock hour. Let's do our 580 Sports Talk headlines, shall we? Let's start with this headline regarding Kansas basketball. So the Players Era was a first-year multi-team event this year. It took place at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas during Thanksgiving. And the tournament was created to give each team at least $1 million towards each team's NIL fund. And the tournament this year actually had a pretty good field. San Diego State, Creighton, Oregon, Texas A&M, Houston, Alabama, Rutgers, and Notre Dame. So everybody got 3 games in the tournament, just like any other typical MTE. And it was so successful that the tournament is going to expand next year from 8 teams to 18 teams. Among the teams that are already committed to next year's bracket are Baylor, Gonzaga, Iowa State, Michigan, St. John's, and Syracuse. Some big brands, some big power programs. Well, now you can add Kansas to that list, according to the reporting of Jeff Goodman of the Field of 68, who reported last night that Kansas is expected to play in the event, and it may even grow bigger than the initially expected 18 teams and take place as a bracket format tournament during Thanksgiving week. Now, KU had originally committed to be in a tournament in San Diego over Thanksgiving, but they're going to play in this Players Era Festival instead, and the appeal of it is really obvious. It's money for the program and money into the NIL fund, which is a little bit more practical than some of these other MTEs. Did you know, Spencer, and I didn't know this until this year, did you know it costs teams money to play the Maui Invitational?
I mean, I figured.
Like that is a loss leader for a college basketball program. You don't make money playing in Maui.
Yeah, I don't think you make money playing. What's the other one?
The Paradise Jam, the Battle for Atlantis.
Yeah,
all
like
of these.
Marshall went to the Battle for Atlantis last year, and I had a friend that worked in the athletic department,
Mhm.
and they went because they had to meet a quota
Mhm.
per what it cost. They sent so many people because it met the quota that they had for how much it cost them.
Okay.
They only went because of that.
So broadly, what we're saying here is that these not preseason tournaments, these MTEs, these tournaments that you see, Feast Week, ESPN promotes the hell out of them. They're all over television. Way to, I don't know, I guess ignore your family during the Thanksgiving holiday and watch a bunch of college basketball. Like, it gets you good games and it gets you good exposure, but it loses your program money.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it gets you out of your environment. That's why a lot of teams do it.
So now here is the Players Era Festival, which is now giving you money for being a part of the tournament, just for being there. And I think that is going to be a much more appealing player event for big time programs moving forward. And that's going to really hurt events like the Maui Invitational, like the Battle for Atlantis, like the Paradise Jam, like and you know, you name any of the others, the Ball Dogs Invitational, whichever you want to call it, because the appeal is going to be in, well, we can be an event that helps us, that helps our bottom line, that helps our NIL, that pays our kids, that pays future players. Yeah, why wouldn't you make that choice if you were a program like Kansas? So sounds like that's where KU is headed next year. Vegas for Thanksgiving week. Of course, they were there over Thanksgiving this year. They played the one-off game against Duke, but looks like they'll be there for a tournament next Thanksgiving.
Did you know they do MTEs? The only reason I know this is because Marshall did this under Dan D'Antoni when I was at school and covered them. They would do multi-team events that would be amongst 4 teams, and it would be based upon, you get one power team, major team, mid-major teams, and then you would go. So Marshall was in an MTE where they hosted 2 games and went to another one, and they went to University of Maryland and hosted A&T State and Mount St. Mary's.
Well, that's kind of what the Vegas thing was for Duke and for Duke in Kansas this year.
But it was like a regional
because
MT.
There was a second game there that night. It was Furman and Seattle.
Yeah.
And KU played Furman and Duke played Seattle.
Yeah.
So, but those games were at Allen Fieldhouse, Cameron Indoor, respectively. So, yeah, those have the last couple of years become a little bit more in vogue. Preseason NIT kind of turned into that too. But again, this is a MTE that's going to give teams money, and why wouldn't a program like KU want to be a part of that? First headline, Spencer.
I find this headline pretty funny. We're going to the NFL because yesterday at about the time the show got off the air, or during the show, I had seen that Falcons head coach Raheem Morris said he was not going to announce a quarterback change at this time. This might have been at like 3 or 4 Central, maybe 5. And then later on that evening, not even an hour or so after we got off the air yesterday, he announced that Kirk Cousins was benched and that Michael Penix Jr., the 8th selection in the NFL draft this last season, will be the new starter for the Falcons. Quote, after review, we made the decision Michael Penix will be Falcons starting quarterback moving forward. Morris said in a statement, this is a football decision and we're fully focused on preparing the team for Sunday's game against the Giants. So Kirk Cousins is benched.
Yeah. And here's what that means financially for the Falcons, just so you know how screwed they are. So if the Falcons release Cousins before March 16th of next year without a post-June 1 designation, they would owe Cousins $27.5 million guaranteed and have a dead cap hit of $65 million.
Crazy.
If they cut him before that date with a post-June 1 designation, they can spread the dead cap hit over 2 years. It would be $40 million in 2025 and $25 million in 2026. They could trade Kirk Cousins, but Cousins has a full no-trade clause, and Atlanta would carry a dead cap number of $37.5 million in 2025. Or they could just keep him and have him be a very expensive backup, and they would owe him another $10 million guaranteed. So that's obviously not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, Kirk Cousins is not going to be a Falcon next year. So I'm interested to see how it looks for Michael Penix Jr. Like, I like him as a prospect. Seems like a good kid. Like, I'm rooting for him to have success. The league needs good quarterbacks. I would love for every young quarterback to pan out. Good quarterbacks means a better product. But like Falcons, what exactly were you doing? I didn't realize how bad it got for Cousins. He had thrown 9 picks in the last 5 games, and only 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I had neither.
Yeah, he's a fossil at this point back there. Can't move, can't protect himself. It's over. And Michael Penix will get his first career start against the Giants. A winnable game.
I'm glad I don't have to see a potential redemption game for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, we all get to see Michael Penix Jr. in primetime in 2 weeks. That Falcons Commanders game getting flexed to primetime.
Might be getting tickets to that.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, you'll be back in that area for the holidays. So yeah, you have to let us know if you go. Send pictures.
I'm looking.
Next headline for me: the Emirates NBA Cup concluded last night with the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Oklahoma City Thunder and claiming the second edition of the new NBA in-season tournament. The Bucks, as a team, chose to celebrate this accomplishment by not celebrating at all. There are pictures from the locker room last night, untouched cases of champagne, untouched pairs of goggles, untouched cases of Michelob Ultra, which I kind of get. The players and the coaching staff decided that they were not going to celebrate the accomplishment of winning the NBA Cup because they got bigger goals in mind or whatever it is. And look, man, that's not good for the future viability of this thing if the team that's winning it tells you essentially that it doesn't really matter.
So what does does it act? I'm not, obviously everybody knows I'm not big into the NBA.
Sure. So this was created.
No, I understand the background, but what does the winning it do?
Nothing.
Okay. Then
you get a trophy, you can hang a banner.
You're not making plans for a championship parade.
There's money involved. I think the players get like a $500,000 bonus or something like that. Each player gets a substantial financial kick. Maybe it's $1 million. It might be $1 million.
But they are playing for the NBA championship, not this NBA Cup.
So the model behind it, what Adam Silver is trying to recreate is, if you follow international soccer or even domestic soccer, you have the in-season competitions that are in addition to the season-long fight for a championship. You have a couple of them if you follow like the English Premier League. There's the FA Cup, which every professional team in England can participate in. And then you have the League Cup, which is only open to the top 4 leagues of the English football pyramid. This is like the League Cup, essentially, because it's limited participation. You can't just, like, the Grand Rapids Gold can't play for the NBA Cup. The team in the Harlem Globetrotters can't play in this thing.
Yeah.
So it's a limited access tournament. So it's much more like the League Cup. And also, exactly like the League Cup, it has a corporate sponsor, which I'm sure makes people involved a lot of money. It gets on TV. There's a TV contract for it, which, again, makes people a lot of money. And the team that wins it celebrates with the trophy and then forgets about it 5 minutes later. And apparently, that's what's happening here with the NBA Cup. Really bad look for Adam Silver's baby. This is something that he really, really pushed for. The players gave in, accepted the terms. So essentially, these two teams played an extra game. It doesn't count as a regular season game. The stats don't count. Nothing that happened last night is going to show up on the career record other than to say that Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard are NBA Cup champions. But, doesn't mean anything. And the players are telling you right off rip too. This doesn't mean anything to us. We're not even going to celebrate it. We're not going to party after we win this thing. We're going to treat it like it's a regular season game against the Wizards, and we're going to keep it moving. And if the players don't care about it, why the hell should we as fans?
Bingo.
It's already hard enough to watch the NBA product. And I say that as someone who is an NBA fan. I get we are not in NBA territory out here. So we don't do a ton of NBA talk.
Yeah.
Not even really in our headline segment. But at the same time, for people who like basketball, like we have a lot of people here listening like basketball, enjoy basketball. And you would think that you would enjoy basketball played at the highest level. So even if you don't have a tie to an NBA team, you haven't been able to, you didn't grow up like I did in an NBA city, but there should still be like an appeal to the idea of watching the greatest basketball players in the world play basketball. The NBA product isn't very good. And Adam Silver spoke about that in a pre-NBA Cup championship press conference in which he says he is looking into the critique of cookie cutter offenses and three-point shooting becoming so prolific across the league. Would you like to guess how many three-pointers per game the Boston Celtics are attempting this year? And that's the defending NBA champion Boston Celtics. This isn't just some team trying something. These are the defending champs. You know how many three-pointers they're attempting per game? Take a guess.
Well, I'll say upwards of 35.
You're not even close. 51 three-point attempts per game, which would easily shatter the league record for attempted three-pointers per season.
Jeez.
And it's not just them doing it, like they're doing it at the highest level, obviously, but it's everybody. If you watch an NBA game, what you are watching is a three-point contest. That is what you are watching. You are watching guys stand around and jack up threes. And it is not real pleasing to watch. And it's sort of like the optimizing of sports. Like we've seen it at all levels, right? Every sport has been optimized by the stats guys, right? Like baseball has been optimized. So everybody throws 100 miles an hour because the easiest way to get outs is strikeouts. And everybody tries to hit home runs because that's the best way to score runs, just hit the ball over the fence where the defense can't catch it. We know these things, but now everybody is chasing those things at the expense of homogeneity, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Everything looks the same. Everybody plays the same.
Yeah.
You don't have whitey ball in Major League Baseball anymore. Nobody plays like the late 70s Royals or the mid 80s Cardinals. There's nobody playing a distinct style of baseball. It's all Earl Weaver sit around, wait for the 3-run home run, and it's all everybody throws 99 with a wipeout slider. That's what baseball is now. And basketball has become the same thing because 3 is greater than 2. So why wouldn't you shoot all 3-pointers or high percentage 2-pointers and nothing in between? The mid-range jumper is gone. It's all 3-pointers or layups. And every team plays that way, with the possible exception of the Denver Nuggets, who still play through a big man in a way that most teams don't. But even Nikola Jokic is shooting a career-high number of 3-pointers this year. Like, that's the way you have to play to succeed. And it makes the product worse because there's nothing distinct about one team or one player or the other. They're all doing the same stuff, shooting a bunch of threes. Anthony Edwards is this explosive athlete, this wonderful basketball talent who's shooting 11 threes a game. Not going to the rim. He's just shooting threes. And it's not a pleasant thing to watch. So I'm an NBA guy. I like the league, but I don't watch a lot of NBA regular season basketball because I do think it is kind of staid and boring and cookie cutter. And Adam Silver says that they're looking at it, says it doesn't think it's a solution to move the 3-point line because what that could lead to is more clogging underneath, which I do think he's kind of right about.
Yeah.
But he did say, quote, whether there's some tweaks we should make, and my sense is I do think we should take seriously this notion of more diversity in offense. Some of the offenses start to look sort of cookie cutter. Teams are copying each other. I think that is something we should pay attention to. Again, the theory of the NBA. These are the best basketball players in the world playing basketball. If you're a basketball fan, even a little bit, that should be appealing to you. But if the NBA product is not appealing to you, just know that you're not alone, even among people like me who are inclined to like the NBA. I'm wearing Nuggets hoodie and cap right now. Like, I am an NBA fan, but I don't like watching the product right now. And just know that the league is aware that maybe their product's not real watchable right now. We're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, an interesting observation Spencer's going to share with us from a former NFL lineman about Joe Thuney's performance at left tackle and whether the Chiefs need to prioritize Big Trey Smith this offseason after all. That's next as we roll on here on 580 Sports Talk. 534 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Spencer with you. Western Kentucky and James Madison tied at 7 in the Boca Raton Bowl, just in case you're curious. Much has been made. We've talked a great deal about the Chiefs' offensive line here the last couple of weeks. Joe Thuney got the nod at left tackle against the Browns, and with DJ Humphries held out of practice each of the last 2 days, it would seem likely that we'll see Thuney at left tackle again against the Texans this coming Saturday. And Thuney held his own, and there's a school of thought. Mitchell Schwartz, former longtime NFL player, said on social media over the weekend that he always thought that Thuney was the best left tackle in the building for the Chiefs the minute he signed with them, even though he has, of course, starred at left guard since becoming a Chief. But he played left tackle on Sunday and held his own for the most part. But Spencer, you were watching a video or a podcast and saw a former NFL lineman make an observation about Thuney that explains a bit of a limitation for him at left tackle.
Yeah, so every Wednesday, Pat McAfee has his buddy AQ Shipley on. AQ Shipley, all-pro, I believe, center?
Yeah. I played at Penn State, right?
Yeah, and he does a segment called In the Trenches. And basically, AQ comes on and has a big board, and he points out plays from offensive lines or, heck, even defensive lines some weeks. And he talked about the Chiefs kind of being in a weird spot right now with DJ Humphries coming in, but then coming out due to the injury because he hadn't played in so long. And he said that, Joe Thuney's basically like an all-around star for their team right now because he's doing everything he can. But his limitations are at left tackle or his arms are short. And in this bite here, he kind of talks about what it takes for him to do what he does. And here it is from Pat McAfee show and AQ Shipley.
You're too far in the season. They went and got DJ. DJ's got to work himself into shape. He played one game. He got his hamstring. The biggest problem with them right now, is the only way that they can sustain drives and keep offense going. That's why Andy Reid's such a good coach, is all the jet sweeps, the trick plays, the screens, the middle screens, every which way you can to slow down the pass rush is the only way they're able to get offense.
Remember, they make it all the way to the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where this man won a Super Bowl, and their offensive line was the question the entire time.
Yep.
Offensive line, question. And what do we remember from that Super Bowl from Patrick Mahomes? Him running his ass off, scrambling almost sideways, completing a thing. It's been like that all year. Then he gets hurt because of potential cluster in front of him. Hopefully they're able to get that done. That's it. Thuney, though, going out to tackle.
It's so hard.
Do you know if he said, I'll do it? Or did he would have had to say
he would have had to say he was going to do it. And listen, that is so commendable because, listen, he's got 4 Super Bowls. He's one of the highest paid guards in football. He's a stud at left guard. He's an all-pro. He's got every accolade known to man. And if this guy's putting the left up, as Chuck Pagano would say, to go out and help the team get out of this game and move to the next one, that is what you want from a leader.
And yeah, I think that speaks to what it is right there. But he's doing a job that he did maybe I believe he played left tackle in college, but he's not really suited for it at the NFL game. But he's doing it for the team, and I think that's helping them out tremendously. But it's also hurting them unless you're running the kind of plays that AQ just talked about.
Yeah, with this team, the personnel that they have healthy, it's hard to argue that the best version of their offensive line doesn't have Joe Thuney at left tackle.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That the best way to line up left to right, 1 through 5, is to put your all-pro left guard at left tackle.
And context to this, he was showing video. You obviously couldn't see the video that was being shown over it.
Right.
He would take the snap, or the snap would be taken by Mahomes. He'd be going back, looking around, and Thuney's arms would just be getting pushed back.
Yeah, so not to talk
into Mahomes,
not to talk too nerdily about stuff, but they talk about punch, right?
Yeah.
When you're an offensive lineman, being able to kind of jab and keep a pass rusher, especially on a bull rush, kind of at arm's length. Well, when you have shorter arms, you've got a little less room to do that. And Myles Garrett's like a condor, so that was a difficult matchup in particular for Joe Thuney. It's a tough matchup for everybody, but physically it was a tougher matchup for Thuney. They mentioned it in that clip talking about Super Bowl 55 and what a mess that was up front for the Chiefs and what that meant to their chances of winning that game, what that did to their chances of winning that game. And we brought up on Monday's show, too, that the pressure rate that Patrick Mahomes faced against the Browns on Sunday was 54%. And that was the highest he had faced in a game since 2020. And after the 2020 season, the Chiefs went into the offseason and said, we have to invest in protecting Patrick Mahomes. Whatever we do this offseason, priority number one, job number one is protect Patrick Mahomes. And so 2 draft picks used on offensive linemen, Creed Humphrey round 2, Trey Smith round 6. The big money for Joe Thuney at left guard, and the addition via trade of Orlando Brown Jr. So essentially that was 3 picks that were used. The first round pick that got traded for Orlando Brown Jr., the second round pick, and then the day 3 pick, they hit a home run with Trey Smith, who went underdrafted because of a health concern that hasn't really cropped up for him in his NFL career, thankfully. So if there are parallels now between 2024 and how much punishment Mahomes has taken and 2020 and the amount of punishment Mahomes took that year, wouldn't you think that maybe the priority of the front office, Brett Veach and company, this offseason would pivot to, we've got to make sure 15 doesn't take these hits? And if that's a priority, can you afford not to pay Trey Smith? Even at $20 million a year, even at $100 million over the life of a contract, or $100 million plus, because that's the guard market right now, and he's going to demand top of the market money at guard, and he's good enough to get it. Can they afford to not bring Trey Smith back at this point? Mark B agrees, said in the YouTube live chat, says the Chiefs need to spend whatever it takes to get Trey Smith back. They have got to take out an insurance policy on the franchise. I really do wonder if they might be reconsidering their offseason priorities, because they extended Creed Humphrey. So Creed's going to be around a while. I don't know what they're going to do at left tackle. Maybe they figure out a short-term solution, but it sure doesn't feel like the starting left tackle for the Chiefs in 2025 is in the building right now. Maybe it's DJ Humphries. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the problem here
but it doesn't feel like it's Wanya Morris or Kingsley Suamataia, right?
No, yeah. The problem herein lies money.
Like
what's their cap situation at, and how much can they go spend on an offensive line, as well as the rest of the team need around them?
And how much more of a haircut are you willing to ask Patrick Mahomes to take?
It seems like every year.
Restructuring. Yeah. And look,
multiple times a year.
Brady did it every year. Yeah. Mahomes is wired similarly, has done it, might be willing to do it again. But this will also impact your ability to bring a guy like Nick Bolton back. And I think the Chiefs really would like to bring Nick Bolton back. I am sure Steve Spagnuolo would like to bring Nick Bolton back, but I don't think you can bring back both Nick Bolton and Trey Smith. And which is why I think we've kind of taken for granted in the course of talking about it. We kind of figured that they were going to bring Bolton back and Trey Smith was going to wear another uniform next year. But I'm not sure they can afford to do that now. And I do wonder how they're, especially if they don't win it this year and the offensive line is the reason why. Because when they didn't win Super Bowl 55, it was because the offensive line had fallen apart. They had to start Mike Remmers in a Super Bowl. If they had a Super Bowl least valuable player award, Mike Remmers would be the only guy that ever won it twice. Because he couldn't block Von Miller in Super Bowl 50, and he couldn't block Shaq Barrett in Super Bowl 55.
Yeah, I am not speculating here, but there's obviously a chance that somebody leaves this team and retires and leaves money on the table.
Possibility as well. Like there's a lot that could happen.
Like there's just, I mean,
right. It's not, it's unfounded speculation.
Yes,
is what
but
you're
it
saying.
wouldn't be unexpected.
But like, yeah, if Travis Kelce were to retire, that would,
free up a lot of money.
It would create an opportunity to use his money and put it elsewhere for sure. We're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, it is bowl season, and we're going to talk a little bit about the game tonight and the game last night too, which was a wild one. And look ahead, tell you which bowls you're going to hear on 580 WIBW during bowl season. That's coming up. But first, I want to talk to you about my friends at Great Life, because everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of men my age, there's two real common New Year's resolutions, right? Number one, I'm going to spend more time in the gym. And number two, I'm going to get better at golf. Like men of a certain age, those are the two big New Year's resolutions, right? Well, with a Great Life membership, you can do both, because you have access to the 8 fitness centers. You have access to the 5 golf courses. If you're an all-inclusive member, like I am, like my family is, that means myself and my wife have access to the golf courses and the fitness centers. My 6-month-old son, we're going to get him on the range as soon as we possibly can, certainly. But with my all-inclusive membership, I get free bucket of range balls every day. Every single day. That's going to help me towards my New Year's resolution, which is the get better at golf one. I got to be honest with you. This body is what I've had for the better part of my life, and it ain't changing. But that doesn't mean I can't, get on the treadmill, get the heart pumping, get the blood flowing a little bit. So there's lots of great benefits to being a Great Life member, and it will help you towards your New Year's resolution, whether it's the fitness thing or the golf thing, or maybe it's both. Go to greatlifetopeka.com for more information. Memberships do make great Christmas gifts. We'll take a break. When we come back, we're talking bowl season on 580 Sports Talk. .548 on 580 Sports Talk. We're rounding third, heading for home on this Wednesday edition. We're going to have a couple of extra bonus bowl games coming up here on the Sports Voice of Kansas during bowl season. We've reached agreement to broadcast Friday the 27th. It'll be before our return to the airwaves. We'll take Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off next week. Friday morning, we'll have the Armed Forces Bowl for you. Oklahoma taking on Navy in that one. That's an 11 a.m. kick. It'll be done by the time we're ready to go on the air. So you'll hear the Armed Forces Bowl before 580 Sports Talk on next Friday, the 27th. Then on New Year's Eve, we'll bring you the Texas Bowl between LSU and Baylor, another Big 12 team. I guess not another Big 12 team. Oklahoma's not the Big 12 anymore. But LSU and Baylor in the Texas Bowl, that'll be a 2:30 kickoff on New Year's Eve. And you'll be able to hear both of those games right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9 from Bowl Season Radio. Of course, the Rate Bowl will also be on Thursday, the 26th, between K-State and Rutgers. That one is just the Rate Bowl. The sponsor name is built into the bowl. I kind of like when you had a bowl name that made sense for the region and then you had the sponsor. Like originally that bowl in Phoenix was the Copper Bowl. And then it was the Weiserloch Copper Bowl. And then for a while,
we know your Copper Bowl
and then it
history.
was the Cactus Bowl, and then it was the Motel 6 Cactus Bowl. Like, I don't mind. Cactus Bowl is fine. It could be the Rate Cactus Bowl. That sounds so stupid. I really wish that were the name of the game.
What was the bowl? There was a bowl that was named something, and then there was another bowl that also had the same corporate sponsor. Was it Cheez-It?
It was either Cheez-It or Chick-fil-A. Like Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. That's such nonsense.
Yeah.
Although they do have a peach shake, I guess, at Chick-fil-A. So maybe it's not so much nonsense.
Yeah, I don't know.
I hear that peach shake goes crazy. I'm not a big, like, if I'm doing a shake, I'm doing like chocolate, right? Like if I'm doing like a frozen ice cream treat, I like chocolate. I don't go in for like strawberry milkshakes or anything like that. It's just not my style. But I do hear the peach milkshake at Chick-fil-A goes crazy. If you're into that kind of thing, anyhow. But yeah, there's the Cheez-It Bowl has like moved locations.
Yeah.
And then does Pop-Tarts have 2 bowls this year?
No.
Have you seen that they've made the Pop-Tarts trophy, the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy, into a functioning toaster this year?
Yes.
So
they're really doing it up at the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
They are. They're going to have 3 different costumed Pop-Tarts bowls or Pop-Tarts at the bowl game. And I don't know which one of them will have his dream come true of being cooked and eaten by the winning team. I never in my life have watched, like, you know how they always say, oh, the bowl game is over, but go to ESPN Plus to watch the trophy presentation for like whatever nonsense bowl it is that you're watching. I'd never done that in my life except for the Pop-Tarts Bowl last year because I wanted to see the Pop-Tart die his noble death. And it was great. It was great television. It was really, really funny.
What bowl was... Yeah, so last night they dumped Scooter's coffee on the coach.
Hope it wasn't hot.
No, it's iced coffee.
Thank goodness. Ryan Silverfield, the winning coach, as Memphis won 42-37. Thus endeth the Neil Brown era. He didn't coach that game, but still, the Neil Brown era comes to an end at West Virginia. In that game.
Did you see any of the highlights of that game?
It was bonkers. Memphis was lucky to win. They had an interception, and they fumbled on the return, but they said he was down before the fumble, so they got to keep the ball and kneel out the clock.
Yeah, that's the weirdest ending to a game. But my guy, Hudson Clement, covered him in high school in West Virginia. He went off last night for West Virginia.
There you go.
11 catches, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. I am predicting right now in 2025, he will have a breakout year for West Virginia and be their leading receiver.
He wasn't their leading receiver this year?
I mean, he might have been, but not like leading.
You think he'll be like, you got a chance for like conference honors next year?
Yeah, I think like Bolitnikov.
Wow. Okay. Put your name on it then, Spence. Damn. Okay. Western Kentucky and James Madison are tied at 7 at the 2-minute timeout in the Boca Raton Bowl. Tonight, the Art of Sports LA Bowl hosted by Gronk, Cal, and UNLV. Make mine the running Rebs in that one. I have no idea who's playing and who's not in this game. I don't know who's coaching UNLV. I don't know a thing about. I don't know what to expect. But you know what? It's football.
That's the problem with darn bowl games.
It really is. Like those mid-tier bowl games, you at least used to know, right? Like you know, oh, okay, yeah. UNLV, Cal's playing. They got the quarterback Mendoza. I think he's in the portal, so I don't know if he's playing or not. I don't think he is.
Well, apparently, you can play in the portal.
Ricky White III is the star wide receiver for UNLV. Is he playing tonight? No clue. You at least used to know that, and now you don't anymore because guys declare, guys enter the portal, or it's another thing that has diminished bowl season. But there is no diminishing the majesty of hosted by Gronk in the name of this bowl. We'll take a break, come back, wrap up the show next. Time for the final word on 580 Sports Talk. Spencer Dupuis, you're up first.
It sure sounds like Hollywood Brown's going to make his season debut for the Chiefs this weekend. How much he plays, who knows? Is it this weekend or is it on Christmas? I don't know. I think it might depend on who's at quarterback for the Chiefs. Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes? Because it sure looks like it's going to be he's practicing, but would you rather have him play the front end or the back end if he can't play both? I think I'd rather have him play the second game because I think the Chiefs offense could still beat the Texans without Patrick Mahomes.
Final word for me tonight. Kansas State is at 6-4 in the men's basketball season, and they're going to have a winning record in Big 12 play if they want to make the NCAA tournament at this rate. And it's unfortunate that the season has gone this way. I don't think that the players that Jerome Tang has assembled are lazy. I don't think they are bad kids. I don't think that they don't care. I think they compete. I thought they competed their tails off last night against Drake after a very slow start. But what I don't think is that Jerome Tang and Coleman Hawkins did themselves any favors by trying to generate sympathy for themselves after what was a heartbreaking loss and a frustrating season so far. That was not the time or the place for that particular conversation, even if they were right to say what they said. K-State women's basketball is up next. We're back tomorrow from 3 to 6. For Spencer, I'm Dan. This was 580 Sports Talk.